Hi folks, this is Carlos Velez from Lacerta Bio, and if you're like us, we're knee deep in getting ready for the upcoming Bio Europe conference in November in Vienna. So, as part of that preparation, and based on a question that we got from one of our clients, we put together this short presentation on how to get the most out of partnering conferences. So. Bio Europe is coming, and our comments on this video are really directed not only towards Bio Europe, but really any partnering conference in general. Now, partnering conferences are great, but there's three issues with them. One is that they can be expensive. Budgets are being cut everywhere, and at least if you're in the U.S., a trip to Bio Europe can cost you $5,000 per person, quite easily. So they're not cheap. So you really have to squeeze as much value as you can out of them. The second issue with partnering conferences is that they are time consuming. There's a lot of prep work that's involved. We talked about some of this prep work in our webinar that we gave last month, and we're going to talk about some of the prep work that needs to be done in a few minutes. But it's also very disruptive to your day-to-day activities. If you have a conference coming up, your regular day-to-day stuff sometimes has to take a back seat to getting ready for this upcoming conference. And the third issue with conferences is that they can be physically demanding. I always tell people, gotta eat a good breakfast, which sounds rather silly, but when to be frank, when you spend all day in a chair, and all of a sudden you're spending hour upon hour in meeting after meeting after meeting, you have to be at least reasonably physically prepared for those couple of days of partnering. So, how do you get the most value from partnering conferences? We broke up this video into three sections: what to do before the conference, during the conference, and after the conference. And really, before you hop on that plane, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen, primarily in the planning and organizing phase of it. And there's three things we want to talk about. The first is to think SEO, which I'll describe in a minute. The second is the importance of tracking your meeting request pace. And the third is customization of communication. So what do we mean by think SEO? SEO, for those of you who don't know, is search engine optimization, which is a fancy term for using language and other things on a web page and on a website so that you'll be found by the search engines like Google and Bing. Now, when you're filling out your profiles, whether it's in partnering or in other software packages, you need to think like an SEO would. You need to think in terms of synonyms. So what that means is to make sure that your profile is complete and to use synonyms. To give you an example, we're working on a project where we're looking for partners for some over-the-counter products. And what we're finding is that companies that are in the OTC space can describe themselves using terms like OTC or non-prescription or over-the-counter with dashes or over-the-counter without dashes. Now, from a computer's point of view, these four terms are different. So if you're trying to be found, it's important to fill out your profile using various synonyms so that you can be found by people who might be looking for the term OTC or non-prescription and so forth. So make sure this profile is complete. Take advantage of all those blocks of free text, like the clinical trials block, the key publications block, and so forth. Always have something in those areas, even if it's something simple as strong IP. Have something. And the more complete it is, it just looks more visually attractive as well. And again, it sounds rather obvious, but make sure that bottom check mark is that bottom box there which says visibility. Make sure that's checked, so it's actually found by participants. So make sure your profile is complete. Use a lot of synonyms, and you'll increase the chances of being found by other companies who might be looking for your particular assets or your particular technologies. The second bit that you should be doing before a conference is to understand how many meeting invitations you need to have in order to hit your meeting goal. Now, we could probably spend a whole 30-minute webinar on this issue, but let me briefly describe what we do. When we prepare for a conference like Bio Europe or Bio, we track a number of statistics: outstanding meeting requests, the number of these meeting requests that are accepted, how many days are left before the conference, and we use these numbers For a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that we use this data for is to track how many invitations we need to send out on a daily basis to hit our goal. So, for example, if you're going to Bio Europe and you have, I believe it's 49 meeting slots total, if your goal is, let's say, 40 meetings, right? Um, the question then becomes how many invitations do you need to send out on a daily basis in order to hit your 40 meeting goal? And that depends obviously on what we call the acceptance rate. Now, what is the right acceptance rate? Well, it kind of depends. If you're a CRO or your service provider, you may only have, let's say, 5 or 10% of your meeting requests that are accepted. So if your acceptance rate is low, let's say 10% or 5%, you obviously have to send out more meeting requests in order to hit your 40 to 45 meeting goal for the conference. Conversely, you may have an asset that is in a very hot therapeutic area, it's very advanced, your acceptance rate may be very high, maybe 50% or more, but the number of meetings that you're going to have may be very low. You may only be meeting with, let's say, the top 10 global pharma companies. So you may only have 10 meetings and have an acceptance rate of 75%, and that may be perfectly acceptable. But really the point here is in the month or so prior to the conference, you need to have an understanding of, again, how many meetings you want to have, what a reasonable acceptance rate is, and therefore how many invitations you need to send out on a daily basis. So you may find, like we have found, that we need to send out 5, 10, 15 meeting requests a day, every day, 5 days a week, in order to hit our target. And so you don't want to have this realization or this insight when there's 2 weeks to go before the conference. You need to understand this a month before the conference so that you have enough time to get your materials together, to fill out your profile, and so forth and so on. And I regret that I went through this fairly quickly. This is a very complicated topic. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us and we can talk further about it. And then the third bit that you should be doing before the conference is to customize every meeting invitation, no exception. Okay, and to give you an example, if you look at the front of the Bio Europe website, you see that there are 3 people. There's Susan from Merck Serono, Maya from Sanofi, and Elaine from Lilly. If you want to meet with them, each one of them should receive a customized email. And it should be customized in some way. It may be a reference to a past meeting. It may be a reference back to their partnering needs and objectives. In other words, you may be saying, dear Susan, we see that you're looking for assets in this therapeutic area. We happen to be out-licensing an asset in that therapeutic area, something like that. And obviously, refer to their pipeline. If your asset might be a good backup candidate for what's in their pipeline, make reference to that. Make it easy for the recipient of that partnering request to accept that request that you're sending them. So before you go, to summarize, again, think SEO. Fill out your profile. Use a lot of synonyms. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is to make sure it's consistent with your website. Make sure it's consistent with presentations and so forth. Make sure all that is consistent. The second, your meeting request pace. How many meeting requests do you need to send out today? How many do you need to send out tomorrow? It's a very important number because otherwise you may wind up being a week before the conference having to send out 30, 40, 50 invitations just to hit your target. And by that point, you may find that a lot of calendars are full and you don't have the number of meetings that you originally planned. So you need to understand that in order to hit your meeting request goals. And then lastly, customization of communication. We talked about this in our webinar last month. There's no more one size fit all decks. Try to customize whenever possible. So now you're in Vienna. By the way, Vienna is a beautiful city. If you have a chance to go to Vienna either a day early or stay for an extra couple of days, I highly recommend it. It's an absolutely beautiful, stunning city. So what do you do while you're there? Again, we keep on harping on this issue of customizing and organizing your presentations depending on the person and the company that you're meeting. That's extraordinarily important. Eat breakfast. This sounds so silly, um, but we go to a lot of conferences. We see this all the time where you have, a 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30 meeting, and the other person just doesn't have the energy, is not paying attention to what you're trying to say. So don't be that person. Do whatever you need to do to be, as active and as alert as you have to. And this is a pet peeve. Please don't leave your coffee cups in the booths. That's just there's just no need for that. Um, so Bio Europe is over. The folks at EBD have taken good care of us. Unfortunately, the Viennese are left behind to clean up after us. So what happens next? Follow up is really where the value is realized. Everything that you've done before this moment in time has been an investment in time, investment in dollars, investment in resources. So now you're back in your office. You've got your stack of business cards. What do you do? The first thing we always highly recommend is connect via LinkedIn and connect via Partnering 360. We recommend connecting with both. It's always great to cement that relationship and take it sort of beyond a professional relationship and border on a personal relationship, because some of these relationships will last you for the rest of your careers. So connecting on LinkedIn is very important, and connecting on Partnering 360 is becoming increasingly important. Customize your follow-up. Hopefully during these meetings, either you remember or you take good notes, however you need to remember what you talked about. But it's always important to make reference to whatever talking points were discussed during the meeting. Again, the follow-up cannot be a copy-paste. It's got to be customized. Otherwise, quite frankly, it's difficult for the other party to take you seriously. So always make reference to what was discussed during that 25, 30-minute meeting. And then lastly, again, we talked about this at the webinar last month. It's important to persist. It's important to get feedback. If the other party says they're not interested in whatever it is that you're offering, please do yourself a favor. Ask why, and try to get whatever feedback you can. So to summarize, how do you get the most value from expensive partnering conferences? Again, before. Do whatever you can to have that profile as filled out as well as you can. Understand what your acceptance rate is, and understand how many invitations you need to send out every day, so that you don't get caught in a situation where you don't have enough time to fill up your calendar. Be completely prepared for each individual meeting. Be as customized as you possibly can. And afterwards, make sure you connect. Make sure you customize your follow-up and persist. If you don't get a response. So, hopefully this has been helpful. If you have any questions, you can contact us, and we'll see you in Vienna. Thanks. Bye-bye.